Welcome everybody to Behind the Gate with Scott and Kate, your podcast for all things harness racing in the Maritimes. Join us, myself and Scott, and we're going to take you on an adventure of all kinds of interesting and insights of harness racing, from events to fundraisers to even organizations that we don't even talk about on a regular basis. My name is Caitlin Wesley, and I'm pretty heavy into the harness racing industry myself, with a stable with my boyfriend, and we have a couple horses that are going strong right now, knock on wood. But I've been in harness racing for quite some time, and I'm pretty excited to get this podcast going. I'm going to pass it along to Scott, and he's going to introduce himself and our special guest.
Hi, Kayla. Nice to join you. My name is Scott Waddell, and I've been in the harness racing industry for over 40 years. And it was actually my very first job when I was 15. I was a ticket seller at Exhibition Park Raceway. And then I just kind of did some odd jobs from there. I timed the races, I charted the races, and then ended up in the announcer's booth. And I did some announcing with the legendary Ian Palmer. I'm sure some of our listeners will remember that name, and he was a well-known track announcer in the Maritime. So that's kind of how I got my start. And I just love the horse racing industry. I've been involved for years, and it's, to be honest, one of the reasons I get up in the morning. Been keeping a Facebook page for a little while now, as you know, Caitlin, and it's just been a lot of fun, and I like doing it. And it's just something I do as a hobby. I don't get anything for it or anything like that. I just do it for the same reason you do, the love of the sport.
Absolutely.
So what we'd like to do tonight, we'd like to introduce our guest. And this is, of course, our very first edition of our podcast with Scott and Kate, Behind the Gate. And we've got a special guest tonight, and we'll bring her on in a minute. But she has been a dedicated person in the harness racing industry somewhat, because she's involved in actually saving some former racehorses from the slaughterhouses and the kill pens, they call them. And she represents a new Standardbreds Maritime group, and they've been doing some magnificent work, some fundraising and things like that. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on our special guest tonight, and wanted to mention as well that tonight's podcast is sponsored by Advanced Appetite and Steve Binkley. So we thank them for their support of our podcast. This is our very first one, so bear with us. We're ironing out a few bugs here, but I'm sure we'll get things going as the weeks progress. So Christina, welcome to the program tonight.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you guys?
Good. So there's a few things we wanted to talk about tonight, and Caitlin, maybe you can discuss some of the points that we'd like to hit with Christina and the great work that she's doing here in the Maritimes, and as part of a bigger group even than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first topic, we're kind of going to dive into what is, New Start Standardbred Maritime. And then another big thing has been, our freeze brands. They've all changed microchips, and how the kill pins work. And then, I'm very interested in, your fundraising side of things, because I have that background of doing fundraising within the Maritimes and harness racing. So I'm really interested in knowing some stuff there too. So if we start off, can you tell us, what New Start Standardbred Maritimes really is? What's the goal for you guys?
So New Start Standardbreds actually originated in Ontario, and has been going strong for about 4 years now. And it's been very successful in placing horses off the track, from slaughter pens, from auctions, from people in backyards that call and say, hey, there's a Standardbred in trouble. So they'll step in. It has raced into the Maritimes recently. There has been a Facebook page for about a year now. It was more so for sharing, Ontario horses out here and things. But since about Christmas time, it's really been picking up, and we've been actually making movement on Maritime horses. So it is solely run based on donations and volunteer work. Nobody accepts a wage. Nobody gets paid for any of our time. It is solely, just a passion between all of us. Kimberly Hale and Jasmine Gray Scott started in Ontario. Again, it has moved into the Maritimes now and has been very successful since Christmas time. We have actually we've brought home Mr. Bob Lewis. He is actually due home to Truro on Friday. So that's very exciting. Extreme Measure is fully funded. He's coming back to Andrea and George Renison to be rehabbed. He needs some TLC. So he's had a really rough life pounding pavement since office track days. Ultimate Art is being raised for right now. He just turned up. But in the meantime, everyone kind of assumes, and I've noticed recently a few posts on Facebook assuming so, that we solely work on kill pen horses. And that is not the case. What New Start's goal is to bring a spotlight to the industry, to the racetracks, for horses coming off a track, aging out, injuries, whatever it may be, that they can't race anymore. We want to provide another option for them for an aftercare program rather than being sent to pound pavement, basically. So, Rock, who's there, came off of the track. He retired. He had a great career on the track. And his owner reached out to us and said, look, I want to give him a really good home. Can you guys do that? Absolutely. Within a couple of days, we had a home for him, and he's staying right here in the Maritimes. So Rhea Blue Chip, another one, she has decided that broodmare is not really being a broodmare is not really the career for her anymore. So again, her owner reached out and said, could you help us place her? 100%. So that's awesome. What we're really wanting to do. We have pulled horses out of auctions. There's currently one in Ontario right now that his owner passed away. He's a stallion, and he is by himself. So they've asked that we step in and help, and that's what they're doing out there too. So it's not only kill pen horses. Yes, there are a lot of kill pen horses that end up in trouble that we do need to help, but that's not what we're doing. We will help them, but our goal is to create a better aftercare so that they don't end up in those positions. You don't see them standing in a kill pen waiting to be bailed out.
And a lot of people, Christine, wouldn't know that you're from or that you reside in Pokalogan in New Brunswick, just a small little community. And got to ask you how you became part of the new Standardbred team, the New Start Standardbred team.
Yeah, so I'm a draft girl. I'm not going to lie to you. I knew nothing of racehorses other than I grew up around a thoroughbred in Pokalogan when I was a kid. I've loved horses my entire life, but I did have a draft. And while we had this draft, Colin Finesse, he is a name in Truro. He is turning 32 years old in April. Just found out last year actually who he is, and Averill Hunter and his wife Elaine actually come down to see Colin, it was very cool. But so Colin came to the barn. He was Amished, and he spent his life in Smyrna, Maine. He was a buggy horse for an Amish family who was very good to him. They were an amazing family to him. When he started to slow down as he aged, he could no longer be their everyday buggy horse, so he went on to be the wife's buggy horse. And when he couldn't keep up for that any longer, he went to be the kid's buggy horse. The family moved to Virginia and reached out and said, look, I can't justify taking this horse with me. He can't keep up, but I can't leave him in the community because they'll use him too hard. And I can't send him for meat because that's just it wasn't a dignified thing for him. No. So I took Colin into my life. And that was my first Standardbred. So I was scrolling Facebook one day, and up pops Careless Whispers was actually the one that I saw. And I said, I don't know what this is. And it turned out to be kill pen ads. And I reached out to the organization in the United States, and I adopted By Golly Ollie. And then I adopted Nat's little buddy. And then I brought home, I've met Kimberly by now, and we're chatting a lot. And then I brought home Made to Shine. Unfortunately, he got ill last year and I had to have him put down. And now we have Homer J. So that's how I really got involved with New Start Standardbreds, was piggybacking my adoptions through New Start Standardbreds to have a contract in Canada to ensure the safety of the horses. So we are a little over 2 years in and going strong, but it's become a passion of mine. I have not got another draft horse, but I do have quite a collection of Standardbreds.
Yeah, you sure do. You sure do. So how does it go about, how do you find out that there are horses available?
So we have quite a few organizations in the States. Before the End of the Line is one. There's some in Kansas. There's some in Texas. There's some in Oklahoma. Pennsylvania is a really big one. We have volunteers that reach out. There's a lot of these groups that will share the horse that's available or in trouble. We can see the freeze brand and check that horse and see it's a Canadian horse. You post it. We don't necessarily always reach out to owners because not everybody's reciprocative. But you post their ad on Facebook and say, do you know this horse? Or a lot of the times Kimberly knows them because she's been in the industry her whole life, essentially, in Ontario. So that's basically how we find them. I do help Penny Parker, so does Kimberly, with Horse Angels in Pennsylvania. She will send me a list or a video of horses and we'll identify them all. That's actually how Simply Business was found, the $1 million winner in Pennsylvania at Christmas time. So we're involved in a few places to find them and to identify them.
Yeah, and I know, Caitlin, you had mentioned you were curious about freeze brands and microchips.
Yeah, because, it used to always be they would have the freeze brand, and it was so easy to search up, track it, and it would come up with their stats, everything on them. But now that we're moving into the microchips, you have to have a certain device just to scan them for, to get their code for their microchip, look that whole massive number up to find them. How do you guys go about dealing with the microchip part, not having, the freeze brands like a consistent thing now?
We haven't run into it a whole lot yet. A lot of them still have the freeze brands. There have been a couple. There was one at Moore's just before Christmas, actually, the last group that did have a microchip, and they do have a reader there. You can purchase these readers very easily off of Amazon or anywhere. But the problem is, if you were at an auction or if you were at the track or if you were anywhere, you can't easily identify that horse from afar. So, and the issue with the microchip is technology is evolving every day. So microchips are a technology that we do need. They allow for a lot more in-depth information like temperature readings and et cetera. But the technology can also be very inaccurate. And we see that in every aspect of life, and the chips are really no different. So they can malfunction. They move in the body. Your bodies can reject the chips, and they're not visible. So again, it's not easily to identify a chip versus a freeze brand. So the freeze brand offers a visible identity to a horse that is a lifeline to them, not just in a bad situation like everybody thinks, but in any situation. I mean, a chip can't be found on a horse at the racetrack. So they should have the brand to fall back on to correctly identify a horse. So if you can imagine being at a racetrack at $1 million race on the line, and you have to scratch that race just because the technician can't find that chip. So, I mean, a standardbred is also recognized by that. Whether it's wintertime and they're fluffy, you see that white line, you know that that's a standardbred. And we have seen it time and time again where we are contacted to help take a horse who may have been sitting in someone's backyard for 10 years and they don't know a thing about them, but they know that that's a brand and it's a standardbred. So, and I know Kimberly has told me that she could count 10 or more horses in the last year that New Start was able to take in and place for owners that who were not standardbred people. But because that horse had a brand, someone did reach out to New Start Standardbreds asking if we could help them. So instead of the horse going to a public auction or worse, we were able to step in and give them a safety net.
Awesome.
So
that's awesome.
I guess the end note is that we do need the microchips, but it should definitely not be a microchip or a freeze brand. We need to find some happy medium that we have both.
Yeah, and I think, like you said,
Absolutely.
with
I
technology, it's evolving.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know on race day for myself, I don't have a horse right now that does have a freeze brand because mine are at that age where it was, my 5-year-old was the first crop to just get that chip. And
Yeah.
like, I have a hard time sometimes in the paddock barn for Charlie to scan him, and he's like, 1 minute he was up here, and then I come back and it's way down here, and it's like, yeah, it shifts, and I totally get it. Like, it's the way their bodies are, and that chip is one of the hardest things to, keep track of, having to have that scanner on hand at all times just to identify them. Not everyone has it. Not everyone can afford one. So it's, it's a touch and go basis. Like, I believe in the free brand. Like, I'm sold. Like, that's just me, my personal opinion, but I'm sold on the freeze brand.
I just think it's like it's a really crucial thing to them, and I don't understand. Other than wanting to hide them down the road, I don't understand why you would ever want to change it. When Shiloh came, made to shine last year, he had both. He had a microchip, and I was like, "Oh, he has a microchip!" Like that. That was really exciting to me. But he
Yeah.
also had the freeze brand on his neck, and
Right.
I mean, all of my guys have it. I call it their jailbird number because they walk around and they're all like tattooed up. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. Like it's important. I really think it is. I mean, if Simply Business didn't have that, they never would have found that horse in the pen. He would have just shipped off. And $1 million winner, that is not a happy ending, and that is not an
Yeah.
ending that he
No,
deserves.
Not at all.
So
absolutely.
So tell us about some of your fundraising efforts. I know that you've been raising a lot of money right here in the Maritimes and doing some raffle draws and things to raise some money for getting these horses back to the Maritimes and finding themselves a home. So what future fundraising efforts have you got in mind, Christina, to keep this going and to ensure that you can still bring some horses back to a life that they deserve?
yeah, again, it is fully based on fundraising and donations. So we it's been a lot this last few weeks. I'm not gonna lie. I hate
No, it's hard.
posting. But unfortunately, the horses don't ask to show up in the pen when they do. So
No.
when Extreme Measure popped up, Andrea's like, yeah, let's get him. I will foster him. George and I will help take care of him. We'll get him back to tip top shape. His feet are full of abscesses.
Yeah.
So he's going to need some time. So she offered to take him. Jace offered. When Mr. Bob Lewis came up, we had like 300 members on our Facebook page. We didn't have the means to fundraise for him. We did
Yeah.
share him. We did try. But God bless Jason Brittany. They did that on their own. They got that boy safe.
Wow.
But what Bob did do for New Start Standardbreds, the Maritimes
Yeah.
group, is he really brought awareness to us. And through the interviews and through the Facebook pages and the PayPal links and everything, he brought awareness to the group. And I do attribute a whole lot to Jace and Bob and Brittany for what we've become in such a short
Yeah.
time. So I don't like putting just, hey, send us $5, send us $10, send us money, send
Yeah.
money. So I've
I
been
know.
trying to find different ways so that people benefit. Like right now we
Yeah.
have one going that's, I call it a third, and a third raffle. So the winner will get $500, and
Yeah.
Lightning Charger's coming back to Ontario. He will get $500 towards his quarantine funds, and Ultimate Art will get $500. So essentially, it's a really big raffle. It's been quite a challenge, especially after what we fundraised in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But after this one, I would like to try some different approaches, maybe some tack items or things like that. Steve Fitzsimmons has reached out. June the 9th, there is a race day fundraiser planned at the Truro Race Park for us.
Oh,
So
good.
that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We're really looking forward to
Excellent.
that. He's invited us for some fundraising efforts, but also to include some of our horses that have been saved in the post parade. So that'll be a lot of fun. Extreme Measure should actually be there for that, so he can partake in the celebrations. But I guess things have moved so fast, to answer your question, that this was the only way to do it really quickly, sort of reaching out to people, but we really haven't had a lot of time to think about it. It's just been a whirlwind and a really good one. People have really stepped up. One thing I have said to Kimberly, and I will stand by it to my last breath, in Ontario, there are so many people and there's so many horses, and it's, it's just, you can fit all the Maritimes in Toronto and Markham, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But in the Maritimes, we take care of our own. And when one of our own is in trouble, it's not just, Extreme Measure wasn't just remembered by the Renaissance at Truro. Extreme Measure was remembered through the whole provinces. And when he popped up, it was like a day, and we raised his bail funds. And I said, do we send him to a rescue, or do we try to bring him back? So when we kept going, it was amazing for the support that we received. So we kept going. And Ultimate Art, we'll keep plugging away, but that's our plan. There have been a couple of discussions about some things coming, but they're not really solidified yet. But Truro is definitely a solidified thing for June 9th. So we're really looking forward to that. And we have Equine Review this year that we're going to go to for the second year. We've had a lot of great donations to sell some tickets on our buckets. We really need to, once we get these horses cleaned up, we really need to focus in on our base funds so that when a horse like Extreme Measure's in foster care or something rises, that you find a horse at the Truro auction or whatever, and it's a hurry, that we have the funds there to help. So we really need to zero in on the base funds.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be nice if, operators at the different racetracks are listening to this. It would be nice for some of the other racetracks to kind of get involved and help raise some much needed funds as well.
For sure. I think
absolutely
that's going to be the key thing. I said, we're so new. It's a new thing. Like I said, I've seen a couple posts going around, kind of mimicking that all we do is save kill pen horses, and that's not the case. The biggest thing for us is we want to intercept these horses off the track and give them a safety net, a happy ever after, a safe retirement that they've earned, and they don't have to turn up in these places. If we could get a better aftercare in the whole industry, they're not going to show up in these places. There'll be no horses to bail. Right. There's always going to be some that go through the cracks. But for the majority, if you could build a relationship and a trust within the industry, it would do leaps and bounds. There wouldn't be fundraisers for horses and pens because they'd be safely in homes.
Yeah,
exactly. 100%. Well, that's awesome. I'm so excited, and to know now that there is a day set for, Truro Raceway to step in and do a fundraising day for you. That's huge.
That's awesome.
Been in it myself. Had the chance to, step in and do stuff like that. I personally had done fundraising when two Cape Bretoners had lost their horses in barn fires. And I agree with how the Maritimes is. Like, we come together when we're when it's not just when we're in need, when anybody in the Maritimes is in need, we come together and we help support them. And I've always said, the industry is a family. We're in it for the same thing. So why we don't help each other as much as we really should, instead of putting each other down or any of that. Like, we need to be positive and pushing people to, help each other, grow the industry, improve the back end of things. Extreme Measure, he's a perfect example. Mr. Bob, he's a perfect example. Why we can't do this stuff more often and, become that family that we all are and, make a better future for the industry. Like, I totally get it. So I'm so glad that you were able to jump on with us and talk to us about this, because not everyone really knew deep down of what it was. Like you said, a lot of people, see posts on Facebook, oh, you're only saving the kill pins. No, not really. There's other horses out there, like Mr. Bob Lewis. See how fit he was. Like, he wasn't he wasn't in dire need of groceries.
He was in a dealer direct pen. So, and he just got to end up being bought by a dealer is what he was. And he was just going to continue going down the pipeline. And same as Homer J. When Homer J came home, Homer J made over $430,000 on the track. And he was all completely fundraised for it. Now, that's a lie because one of his owners said, absolutely, I will help. He did donate towards his bail. One of his trainers, when I talked to him on Facebook, he's like, where do I send the money? And he essentially paid off all of Homer's quarantine funds. People really did come together for him. There were some people that told me just to let him go for meat, but I don't think he raced very good for them or something. I just don't think they were biggest fans. But he was in really good shape. There was nothing wrong with Homer J. He was just at a bad place at a bad time, and a meat dealer bought him, and then they're like, we'll sell them to you for $1,000. So instead of him continuing through the pipeline further and further, we did intercept and we moved him home. But it's so much more than the kill pen. It is just. It's so much further. I mean, you look at Oak Rock, El Dorado. He's living his best life out there in Ontario right now with Jess Match and her fiance, Brad. They're having a great time. Spicy Victor, he just got surrendered in Ontario off the track. He's going to live his best life. Like, this is what we need, a better aftercare. And, sometimes there's funds that they want for them, and sometimes they just really want a good home for them. And another thing I will say about the Maritimes is the horses are your family here. They're not just, it is business, but they're not just a car with a motor. When the motor blows, you ship it off. It's family. Look at Electric Still with Andrea and George. He's just hanging around with some minis and being a horse.
Yep.
But I love it.
I totally understand. I had one, and Scott, I had one off the track, and he was our pet. He was our family pet. We had to put him down to an accident, and it was heartbreaking for us. But the goal was when he was retired, he was our saddle horse. He was our pet. He was, go out and jog and have fun. Same thing as Sil is, he's there to teach people, what harness racing is, to live his best life, to be spoiled. And they all should have that opportunity. After being a hard athlete, I absolutely think that they need that safe landing.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you very much, Christina, for joining Kate and I on our first edition of the Behind the Gate with Scott and Kate. So again, sponsored by Advanced Appetite, and it's been a learning thing for me because I've always heard about the adoption program and horses going to new homes. And, when I first heard from you, you kind of randomly sent me a message, and, we kind of ended up, reuniting, a former breeder, Avril Hunter, with Colin Finesse, who I believe was with Carl Eisner in Truro. So that was a fantastic story that, I kind of first learned about it and, tried to get the word out through our Facebook page, and then just kind of seen it spiral from there as far as I think people's awareness of what's going on, and your efforts especially.
Perfect. Yeah, it's been really well reciprocated, and if anybody wants to know how they can help, you can check out our Facebook page. The one here in the Maritimes is New Start Standardbreds Maritimes. Ontario is just New Start Standardbreds with nothing. You can apply to foster. There's forms on newstartstandardbreds.com that you can fill out surrender papers or intake forms. If you have a horse that you would like to home with us, please, by all means, reach out. You can send us a message on Facebook. You can fill out an intake form. If you're looking for a specific horse, Standardbreds are not just race horses anymore. They are versatile. No. You can take them anywhere. And there aren't very many breeds that you can take off the racetrack and ride them around bareback in a halter and think, this was fun.
Yeah.
Like there's something about them, and they are like Lay's potato chips. I say this. Once you have one, you're not one and done. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Oh, I totally
Absolutely.
agree. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, perfect. Thank you for joining. For everyone that is listening, stay tuned for our next episode because we have some super exciting things going to happen. We're going to explore and celebrate some wonderful things within the harness racing industry. So stay tuned for the upcoming episode number 2, and we'll surprise you on who's going to be on that for a special guest as well. So Thanks everyone for joining, and see you on the track.